Today I'm going to do a short video on how to groom your chinchilla. The equipment you need are some special grooming combs and one of these lint rollers, and of course the chin. Personally, I tend to wear white gloves, cotton gloves, because I have a tendency to handle the animal a bit too much, so this stops the oil from my hands going onto the animal. Here we have a lovely 5.5-month-old standard grey male. Being a baby, it means it's slightly easier to actually groom him, but the process is the same irrespective. So what I tend to do is start off trying to remove all the loose fur, and I do this by gently using the comb, and these are special combs with very sharp tips, so you have to be extremely careful, and you should groom them with the comb flat to the skin, as opposed to doing that, because it can actually hurt and even cut the animal. So to start off with, I tend to groom first of all from the head to the tail. You do this, as I say, very gentle motions. So when there's resistance, just raise the comb off the fur, and you just do this gently to get all the loose fur out of the animal. And that's the first process. As I say, make sure that the comb is actually flat to the animal's back. And if you do it gently, you can see they can become quite settled. So, oh, he didn't like that. So you just gently ease the fur out. All you're trying to do is ease loose fur out, as opposed to pulling the fur out. Start off, I use a wide tooth comb, and then when you go to the finishing grooming, you go to a narrower comb. So once you've done the basic removal of the loose hair, you then gently comb the hair by the neck. Do this, keep the animal's weight on its back leg, try and keep it still by holding it on the ear, and just gently do that. They don't tend to like that, to be honest. Do it the other side. Again, he's getting a bit impatient now. Do it the other side, just hold it there. This is really to keep them still during this process. You have to be extremely careful, because if the tips of the comb catches the skin around the neck, it can easily tear it. You can also, the place they hate the most is under the chin. As you can tell, they really don't like that. But again, you have to do it gentle. And then if you can try and groom the fur near the belly, that'll help give it a nice finish. Once the basic grooming is done, you then need to try and get it into the show condition. And you do this by, again, starting with the wider comb, actually combing the fur in the opposite direction. So you start from the tail and you comb the fur upwards. Okay, so you do that. What I would say, if an animal is priming heavily, do not overgroom, because if you overgroom, especially if it's coming towards the end of its prime, you'll end up with hardly any fur around the tail end. So you're better off grooming less in that area, and then actually trying to hide the priming lines later on. Okay. One of the things you can do as well is to groom the fur up from the sides over to the top. That can help hide lines. You can see he's not very happy. He was at a show last week and I think he's had enough of grooming. Okay. Anyway, that just gives you a rough idea of how you do it. When you then use your smaller tooth comb and just try and gently ease the fur upwards. Just gently ease the fur. Like that. Just go and putting it through the very tips of the fur and just removing any loose fur. Once you finish that process, you'll notice there'll be loose fur on the back of the animal. The way to get rid of this is to use a lint roller. Make sure it isn't too powerful, otherwise you'll end up pulling chunks of fur. I tend to rub it once or twice on my clothes and then roller it over. And this will actually take the excess fur off the back of the animal, which makes them look far nicer under the lights. You can see there's quite a bit of fur on there, so I'll use a second one, do the same thing. Okay, and then finally you give it a little shake gently to try and fluff up all that fur, and then pop it into the show cage. If you go in for me, good boy. There's your groom chin. What breeders tend to do is to give the animals a sun bath up to about the Wednesday before the show. That's assuming the show's on a Sunday. And then you give it the last sun bath then, so that there's no loose sand left deep into the fur. Grooming wise, they usually groomed a week before the show, the day before the show, and then the morning of the show. As I say, you have to be extremely careful with these combs. A normal cat or dog grooming comb will not work because it cannot get through the dense fur. You have to have these special chinchilla grooming combs. The only place I'm aware you can get them in Europe at the moment is a company called Grooming, which are in Germany. In terms of sand, breeders who exhibit tend to use the very fine chinchilla dust sand, which you can get from a company called Charnwoods in the UK. It's very much like talcum powder as opposed to the coarser normal sand. With regards grooming, personally I only groom my animals when I'm taking them to a show. Generally they do not like it, so unless it's really necessary for some other reason, I only groom them ready for the show.